Good afternoon, and happy Thanksgiving. Happy St. Patrick's Day. There's a lot of people wearing green today. I want to say that when I was looking for a PowerPoint slide format to kind of liven things up from what my usual just total black background is, I happened on this Irish palette, and I thought that would be perfect for today. Now, you may wonder to yourself, well, is that cultural appropriation? Because is he really Irish? Well, I'm not, but I do want to tell you that I have fathered two children that are 1/4 Irish each, and that's us in front of the cliffs of Moher, overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. And then that's my wife in the other photograph with me. We're standing on the very picturesque and famous Halfpenny Bridge, pedestrian bridge in Dublin. Also, last night for dinner, I had 2 helpings of shepherd's pie. So now that I've established my credibility in using an Irish-themed PowerPoint slideshow, we can now move on to discussing HPO Web, if I may. I probably know like 80% of you in this room, and probably at least 80% of you are already expert at using HPO Web. So I didn't want to beleaguer you with my usual dog and pony show that I do at these workshops and conferences. You're well past that. So I would like today to be more of a Q&A. So I'm going to go through a few slides to kind of tickle your brains, and if you can come up with some questions for me to answer, the things that you've wanted to do on HPO Web and you didn't know how to, or other things like that, I'd rather kind of work together like that this afternoon. So the website, if you don't know it, easiest way to get to HPO Web is to go to our office website, hpo.nc.gov, and then just throw a /GIS at the end, and that will take you to what I call our gallery page. It has many, many versions of HPO Web. HPO Web is not just one website. There are variations for different audiences, and other maps and things that we have available, story maps and whatnot. So that's the easiest way to get there. So that's what I try to remember. So as of the beginning of this month, just a rundown of how many places we have mapped within HPO Web. If you look at that resources mapped toward the bottom, it's almost 140,000 places. Now you may recall that Beth earlier had said 142,000 resources. That's in our database. There are a couple of thousand resources that we do not map in HPO Web. Oddly, we do have some archaeological resources listed in our survey database for whatever reason. And then we also have, if you've been working in the state long enough, I won't look at anybody in particular, you know that we used to do what's called a block face, and most of you have probably seen these files, where they're really just collections of resources. So maybe it's often a single block where you'd have 10 houses, for instance, and that a single file was created for that. And maybe that's related to the fact that photography was expensive. Maybe might be one reason. As we come back along and resurvey communities, we may be assigning survey site numbers for every individual property along that block. And so once we do that, I'm mapping the individual houses or the buildings within that area, and then I will remove that block face symbology from the map. So there's still a file, but we're not mapping it, just for clarity's sake on the map. So that's why there's about 140,000 places on HPO Web, and that is almost the entirety of everything we've ever surveyed that you have surveyed for us, or that we have surveyed as staff in the 50-year history of the program. There's probably about 200 remaining out of that 140,000 that have not yet been mapped, just because the files are missing. So some of you may have them in your closets, at your house, or they're just things that are very difficult to map. But we have over 3,000 places on the National Register. I have no idea how that relates to other states, so I would love to hear some feedback of whether we're like above or below other states around us. And then study lists. These are all things you're well familiar with, so I won't go over all this. But this is just a rundown of all the inventory count that we have on HPO Web. And then, yes, Clay. Oh, yeah, okay. So these are places that are both on the study list and have been determined eligible. So they're two different processes, and you do that work. So there's really 4,900 places on the study list. I think I did that right. I think I'm counting that way. And then just briefly, so the ways that you can use GIS data, you can just use the live website. You can see what's available on the website. If you have GIS staff in your firms, you can certainly download the data from our website and use it within your own internal GIS systems if you prefer. And then we also have what's called web map services, which are really just like, it's like the data stream that's feeding into our map. And that's another way that if you have GIS staff, they may prefer to use our data that way to make maps on your behalf or not. And I will say that if you do not have GIS staff in whatever company you're working for, and you are asked by our office to create GIS data, I can set up a way for you to do that. I know this is Survey and National Register consultants mostly, but I also know that some of you are doing Section 106 work for Renee's group, and so if you run into that situation where you need assistance in creating GIS data to satisfy the project requirements, just talk to me. Or you can talk to Clay, or you can talk to Jennifer and Cynthia, because they have it set up that way already. Now, once you're in the field, you can use HPO Web. You can just bring it up on a phone or a tablet. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. You still have all the same functionality. Presuming that you have internet connection where you are, you'll be able to bring up the website just as you would at the office. And you'll have all the same functionality in terms of like searching for things, for clicking on points and whatnot. There is a mobile app available through Esri, which is the company that we use, the software company, and it's called Field Maps. It's a free app to download, and I can walk you through how to access our data through that application. It's geared for your phone, but it does not have the same functionality as if you just pulled up our website. So the searching functionality is a little different, and it serves different purposes. And then I will also mention that some of you in this room may have used CR Surveyor in order to do data collection for us for some of the hurricane grant money projects that we've had in the past. So that is the only data collection mobile app that we have working at the moment. It is something that was developed by the National Park Service and the National Alliance for Preservation Commissions. And the two of them got together and created this app called CR Surveyor. We have intentions, as we heard a little earlier, we're making some technology changes, and we hope to have our own mobile data collection app running at some point, where it would really just be feeding our database, the survey database. And this, for those of you who enjoy technology, and I've heard some folks who'd rather use the paper, but in the future, it will hopefully populate the database so that you wouldn't have to use the Microsoft Access databases that I send to you folks. And then we also make liberal use of third-party data sets within HPO Web. So there there's an organization called NC1 Map that does a lot of collecting of data from each of the counties. Two of the data sets that they make available are building footprints across the entire state, and then also parcel boundaries across the entire state. I know you've seen this, but I can also show you how you might be able to color code the parcels in an area that you're surveying so that maybe it'll help you find perhaps like, mid-century neighborhoods, or give you a little better sense of the chronology of buildings within a particular community. And then we also have, and the DOT in the state has made available a very large collection of historical aerial imagery, and it's not in every single area that you might want to consider surveying, but it can be remarkably helpful, especially if there are multiple years of imagery available where you're working. Thanks, Guy, bye. So with that, I would love to field some questions, or maybe we can do a live demo. We may have to do a community prayer to the God of internet hotspots first before that, but what can I answer for folks? Oh, come on now.
Could you maybe just kind of summarize the different HPO webs and why one might be better than another? Or
Yeah.
which ones offer certain things?
Yeah, so there's two primary for most folks, right? You are not most folks, but most folks are either going to be using the general audience version or the advanced user version. Now, the data sets that are on there, like our SHPO data is consistent across every version of HPO Web. So you're always going to see all the National Register, all this surveyed work that you've done. But I load up the advanced user version with additional layers of data. So I think like the parcel layers, I don't think are on the general audience version. So if you want to be able to click on the map, turn on the parcel layers, and click on them to see who the owner is, say, if you're in the field and you just want to know who the owner is as you're walking up to the front door, you could do that. There are other additional tools that are available on the advanced user version as well. One, for instance, is that HPO Web lives in an ecosystem with lots of other companies and federal and state agencies that make available their GIS data for sharing. So you can in the advanced user version, there's a tool that allows you to very easily add in additional data sets. So like if you wanted floodplain, or if you wanted to know all the bike infrastructure in a place, like you could layer these things on top of what's already there. That's something you can't do in the general audience version. So those are the two main ones that folks use. Consultants, on the other hand, there is a version, especially for the Section 106 consultants, there is a version made specifically for the Section 106 consultants and our DOT partners. So there are a lot of DOT layers on that map, bridges and their tip project locations and all sorts of things like that. That version of the map also has some of the data sets that we password protect. So all of our environmental review project locations and review areas. I don't know if the data sets are available for consultants, but we have covenants and easements on lots of different properties. We had about 10 years ago, we started mapping all the Confederate monuments across the state. And then it was right at that point when we started making that data set available that there was a lot of outcry about them. So we still maintain that layer, but it's behind a password. So general audience, advanced user, there's a DOT version, and then there are much more specific audiences than that, other versions that I make. There are things like Ramona wanted me to make a map that combined sea level rise data with National Register listings. so that we can do a little better planning for what might happen in the coming years. You should know that when you go to that hpo.nc.gov/GIS, anything that's on there is available for anybody, for the public to open up and look at. We don't have any websites that are password protected. I only have data layers that are password protected, which means that you can open up the map and any map will work, but if you don't enter the proper credentials, you just won't see that data layer pop up. So you can go to the DOT Section 106 Consultants version of the website of HPO Web, and you can just, when it asks you for a password, you're like, I don't know, just cancel. It'll still open up the map. You can still use all the tools. You can still see all the DOT data layers because those are, free and open to the public, but you won't see any of the ones that we have password protected. All right, I should have had you do some calisthenics before. I told you I'd make you sedentary. What else?
Are there any new layers that you're working on that you can give us a little?
New layers. I was just so happy to get the 140,000 done. So Beth mentioned that we're in a process right now of mapping every single Rosenwald school across the state, and probably like 600 of the 800 are long gone. So this will be more of kind of a research data set for you as opposed to what's still standing. What else am I doing, Sarah? Dina? Nah. Green books. So that's another. So are folks familiar with the Green Book project? There were about 325 places across the state that were listed in the Victor Hugo Green Books for Black tourists and travelers as safe places or places that would take your money. During Jim Crow South, the publication ran for about 30 years between 1935 and 65, and so we are mapping all of those locations. I was able, so this is a project that started a while ago, and I was able to probably map about 2/3 of them at least, maybe 3/4, and there were probably 65 or so that they're just listed in the Green Book as like Beth King's Beauty Parlor in Whiteville, and with no address, and unless you have boots on the ground in Whiteville, like it was going to be really hard to find that. Whiteville doesn't have city directories, or probably, maybe Sanborn. They definitely don't have Sanborn maps.
The road that it was located on isn't a road anymore.
Yeah.
It's like receded into forest.
Yeah, so there are plenty of reasons why it'd be very difficult to map these Green Book entries unless you are people like yourselves where you're in the community making connections and somebody remembers Beth King's Beauty Parlor from 1937. So that's what we're doing now. We've got some folks that are helping us with that project. Yeah, I think that's, yeah, please.
Do you have any, I know you said you did 2/3 of them, any sense of like when you were mapping them, how many of them are still existing?
Yes. Not that many. Oh, who is it? Is it Ellen? Ellen! Tell us, what have you found?
I think we have around 60 sort of studies that we
So you said there are like 60 that are extant? Out of 325? Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I mean, like, you look at Winston-Salem or Durham, and there were 25, 30 different entries for each of those towns, and there's like one place left. So it's pretty brutal. And a lot of that was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of those demolitions were through urban renewal And, you know, they're just places that are, they're not in historic districts. They like the early historic districts that this office was creating. So there's a lot of disincentivized upkeep of those properties. So. Who else has a question? Yes?
Could you give us a window into updating the data post-Helene?
The data post-Helene? Who wants to take that and come to this microphone?
While you're walking, I'll give you my own personal anecdote. We had a project where we evaluated a house, and then the hurricane came, and we asked the DOT if we wanted to go back out. And she said, no, you evaluated it. When it gets to mitigation, we'll see if it's still there.
Interesting.
So we kind of intentionally haven't done much revisiting, really just because if we go out in the field right now, we're a little bit of just kind of a disaster tourist, a little bit. You know, we're not FEMA coming to help you. We don't have any assistance really except to find out if your house is still gone. And if it's gone, it's still going to be gone when we do come back to that county. So we've sort of intentionally stayed back. That said, our Western staff has been out in the field, by invitation, and I don't know if you want to speak about anything.
Do you want to just say that restorations were working really hard? Like, we have been out in the field, we're just not surveying for servicing.
Yes, so Beth added rightly that restoration in particular has been out in the field a lot. Brett's here. Jennifer Cathy has pretty much all of our western counties. But Megan Sullivan, who has been with us about a year now, I think, right? She has taken a few of those counties, but permanently, not with anything to do with Helene. And then Megan and Brett have both kind of helped come in to help Jennifer a little bit. So restoration's definitely been out in the field, very active. We just haven't been doing survey work. So. Oh, and Andy would like to tell you how many unverified locations are no longer on our map.
I should have referred to this already. But I'll do what you say since you're my boss. Yeah, so I mean, the places that have, how a place gets mapped has evolved over time. And Beth referred to the USGS quads. That was when I started 15 years ago, and I think I've been here longer than anybody else on the staff, or for the Survey National Register staff. Oh, Chandra. I'll wait her out. Okay. So when I first started, one of the first things that I did was to take all 1,500 of those USGS quad maps that we had that my boss, Michael Southern, who many of you know, had helped to digitize. So they were in electric PDFs, electronic or JPEGs, rather. They were in JPEGs, and then one of the first things that I did was to kind of pin every one of those 1,500 JPEGs in space across North Carolina, and then everywhere where one of you had circled a black square indicating a building on the quad map, I would take my little computer mouse and click and set a point there. And after those 1,500, and after I took the fork out of my eyes from that process, then we moved on to another stage, which was to take the addresses that were in the survey database and to run that essentially through Google and have Google come up with points on the map where the addresses were. But if you've worked in the survey database much, you know that those addresses really only existed for urban environments. This was before E911, and so a lot of the location information in the survey database reads like this. 1/3 mile southwest of the intersection of State Route 1214 and State Route 1227. So then the next thing I did was to like, okay, well, I know it's 1214 and 1227. Now I can tell the GIS, put a point at the intersection of 1214 and 1227, and then I will manually move that point to 1/3 mile southwest of that intersection. And, you know, and these are a lot of rural properties, so maybe they disappeared over time, maybe there's still something there. And this is, you know, this is using aerial imagery from 12, 14 years ago. So I'm like, that could be the right place. I can see a building there on the aerial. And I got to, you know, I'm not a surveyor by any stretch, so I've learned a lot by being around all of you and just absorbing this. So now I know roof types pretty well from an aerial image. And as time moves on, then we get more data sets, we get better resolution on imagery, we get Google Street View in places that didn't have it before. So it all gets easier as time goes on, which is nice. But a lot of these places I had, so I think of those 140,000 places, I probably had mapped, I don't know, 30 or 40,000 with some sense of like, feeling like they were pretty much on the rooftop, and then the other 100,000, I think I pretty much literally opened up, maybe not 100,000, but I probably opened up the survey file on like 60,000 records. So like I would plop a point on the map and be like, okay, this is sort of the right place, and now I need to open up the physical paper file and say, do I have an aerial photograph, or I'm sorry, do I have a photograph of the building that I can match with either the aerial or Google Street View? Are there coordinates, UTMs, right? Not that long, UTM coordinates for old surveyors. Are there coordinates there? Did the surveyor record an owner's name that I can match with the deed? Is there a site plan? So like, all this work that you do is what is enabling me to feel confident about where the point on the map is located, and all the work that your ancestors have done. So, like, please, well, first of all, thank you for all the work that you have done, because on those 140,000 places are only on the map because of the work that you did, right? I'm sort of following up a little behind, but it's really all the work that you did. But I would also encourage you then to, I know we hate the database, it's not functional. I mean, and part of that is just the software, right? We're trying to get off of Access. Sarah's trying to find $2 million in the legislature to get us off of Access. But you know, as Beth has said in past conferences like this, like, know that the work that you're doing, and as painful as it can be in the database, you are helping yourselves, first of all, your future selves will thank you for populating the database with as much information as it can, and accurate information about location, but you're helping other, you know, future generations of historians and SHPO staff people like myself. So like, I want to thank the folks that were doing this in the 70s because they took good photographs and made good site plans. Like, there are a couple of surveyors, and I'm just like, I just want to send a thank you card because like their site plans are so awesome and helped me put a point on the map for a place that may not even exist anymore, but I feel confident that I have it in the right place. What was it? Trustworthy but not infallible? That's great. I feel like that could be talking about me, yeah. You should know that when you click on a resource on the map, there is a pop-up. It gives you the name, the address, you know, some brief amount of information that I extract out of the survey database. But at the bottom, there's a field that I call spatial accuracy, and it's not really filled in with a lot of information, but it should give you a tiny hint of a sense of how trustworthy that individual point location is. So I might have something in there like, I actually looked at the survey file. And again, that's not completely 100% foolproof, but if I've looked at the contents of the survey file, I've probably done quite a bit of research in making sure that point's at the right place. I don't even remember what the original question was.
How many, so out of all,
Oh.
how many Unverifieds do you still?
Yeah, so I had Peter hired me, and we had this grand idea that we would get local people to crowdsource these efforts, right? Like we would put all these random spots, and Claudia too. Like we had I had these 60,000 places across the map that we were going to get the Davidson County nerds of history that were going to help us figure out where, because, there's only 200 and 300 places in Davidson. So, that would be no skin off their nose. I had 60,000 staring me down. Well, they only have 300. They could do the work. That never worked. So we had 2 different layers in HBO Web that was sort of we pretty much trust these to be rooftop accuracy. And then there was another layer that we had called crowdsourcing with these grandiose plans that never emerged. And then once I lost hope in my ability to get other people to do my work, we changed that name to Unverified. So I had these 60,000 places unverified, and I've been here 15 years, and this is what I do. And then now we're down to 150 out of those. So see, this is very strange to me because you're applauding me for actually doing my work. But I'll take it. Thank you. Other questions? Yes.
I'm going to upload shape files to HBO Web. Is there a way to export the polygons and points that we created to HBO Web?
Export the polygon, or export the points that you've created? So you have uploaded a,
So I know that we can upload shape files to HBO Web.
it's just for display though, yeah.
And so I've also used Etherweb to create my own boundaries and polygons. I was wondering if you could use Etherweb to export those boundaries that we created on HBO Web.
Export the boundaries that you have created on the HBO Web to your own office, not to me.
Right,
Yeah. Don't y'all have GIS staff at RGA?
Well, I think it's still experimenting with creating my own patterns.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. It's not something I've done because mostly. So for the rest of you, you can upload shapefiles into HBO Web. So if you are given a shapefile, for instance, and I do this sometimes with the DOT. We have a couple of the women that work over there that I'm pretty closely associated with. They're not GIS users, but they get GIS data frequently from their colleagues, and so they're asking me, well, where is this thing? You can take a shapefile, which is just a type of geographic data, and you can pull that up in HBO Web, and it will display. But our version of HBO Web doesn't really allow for a whole lot of manipulation. You can't really do any native kind of spatial analysis with it. It's really just like a picture. So I'm trying to think of what the next step would be for you, but I'll get back to you on that one. You can also upload, if you have GPS data out of your phone or KML, you can upload those things as well. So if you are given if you're given some sort of geographic data, you might probably be able to import it into HBO Web and at least display for visual purposes where that is. Yeah.
I've mentioned this before, but is the one file of all the statewide data that releases every month is starting to get unwieldy on your average computer that is not designed for GIS?
Yeah.
Has there been any talk about that, or is there any possibility that in the future that could move to 100 counties or 3 physiographic regions so that you don't have to have the whole state?
Yeah, good news is coming, Matt. And part of it is because the platform that we use is going to be turned off in about a year. So Esri makes this software that we're using. Sorry, shouldn't be talking so directly into the microphone. Esri makes this software that we use, and every 5 years or so, they put out a new web technology, and they're like, we're not going to support that anymore. And we're almost at that stage where they are going to stop supporting the platform that HPO Web sits on. We're about a year out from that. So I need to redesign HPO Web on the next era of web technology that they've made available. And when that happens, I'm pretty sure that you'll be able to not only do a download of you can specify a spatial area and just say, hey, I just want this. Not even one county, but maybe it's just one town or one neighborhood that you need, and be able to extract the GIS data for that. So yes, I'm hoping this time next year that'll all be a reality. Good question. That's one that we've been trying to make happen for a while.
Will there ever be a timeline feature for the resources available? So, like, be able to see the beginning number of PowerLink resources and then the growth and loss of the resources over time? And just because it's been active for decades now, we have enough information.
So are you thinking about like a map that would show like little firefly as buildings are constructed? And lost. Yeah, that's cool. No, that's a great idea. Yeah, I feel like now that we've mapped everything in the survey database. Now, we're constantly have a dragnet behind us, right? So all the work that you're doing is adding to the database constantly. But now that like the majority of the mapping portion has been accomplished, and then we do need to get past kind of a couple of these technology hurdles that we want to implement in the next year or two. But then after that, I feel like there's a lot more space for me to do things that are more, that are less about the mapping and more analytical. And one thing that I feel like we don't really do well as an office is to curate our data. Like it's just a fire hose of information. You open up HPO Web and there's 140,000 places mapped on it. Like that's a little scary to someone who hasn't used it for a while, or when they're coming to it fresh. And I really feel like we could do a better job of making maps that are very topic specific, and or what Esri calls story maps, which is just they're storytelling with a geographic component, but it's really about the story, which is like that's exactly what you people do. It's all about the story. And by the way, it happens at a particular place, and to make to curate our information a little more in more interesting ways. So, things like I don't know, we're the 10 most interesting dairy farms and ice cream makers across the state that we've ever surveyed, or where are the places that are on the National Register that got listed in the last 3 months? That sort of thing, where we're just getting little bite-sized pieces of information for folks, especially for folks that are not necessarily preservationists or historians, but are interested by their communities. So I think as I move out of like the mapping space and more into analytical, I think there'll be more opportunities for me to do things like you just described, which is, wouldn't it be interesting to be able to see like the evolution of building construction and loss within a community with a firefly effect. So that's a great idea. Oh, all right, I think you get the last question.
I was just gonna kind of tag on to that to say too, maybe a more advanced like search feature with it. Just thinking about like other states I've worked in, you could put in like, okay, not just searching for things that are not registered listed, but like when they were listed, can be really helpful. So just little things like that, that if you have more advanced like search function, that I think the data is all there, it's just like that.
Yeah, that is definitely in the works as well. And part of that is related to our ability to connect the survey database to the map. So once we do that, then we can leverage any of those fields for querying capability. But it's only as good as the data that's in there. So, it also rely on all of you to help populate the records in order to get the fullest possible expression of whatever query you're trying to perform or filter you're trying to do. So, all right. Thank you.